Let's come back to the iodine piece. I've done a couple interviews talking about this. I know you have a few interviews slash videos you've made on your channel. You got into it a little bit, but you are one of the voices that's advocating for taking this. And a lot of people aren't. And a lot of people are scared of this supplement. So I think it's important we go into it. And you mentioned Lugol's. Let's talk about dosage wise what you take and why you don't fear it.
I learned about iodine and how there's an epidemic of deficiency when I read Dr. David Brownstein's book, and it was probably back in 2008. I don't know, it was forever ago. And I'm like, holy crap. And then, of course, I didn't blindly believe Dr. Brownstein. Then I was like, that just opened my brain. I'm like, okay, let me look into this. And I found out that most soils are so depleted of iodine, either depleted or the soil has been so misfarmed that the iodine is locked up and inaccessible to the plants. And if the iodine is not in the plant that you eat, you're not going to get any iodine from that plant, even if it's supposedly iodine rich. If the cow or the pig or the chicken that you eat has not grazed on grass or bugs or worms that came from iodine rich soil, I don't care what the USDA Food Data Central says about iodine content. It's not going to have enough iodine. That's number one. Now, like I said earlier, if you live within 20 miles of an ocean coastline or an island, your soil is probably iodine sufficient. And if you eat plants that grow there or you eat animals that graze there, you're probably going to be fine. Or if you eat fish from the ocean, you're going to be fine, right? Now, I learned that the Japanese will sometimes, their average diet, they'll eat 17 grams of iodine every day, their entire life. That's 17,000 micrograms. No, they won't eat 17 grams. I misspoke. 17 milligrams. Okay, every day, which is 17,000 micrograms. Now, our federal government here in the United States says that you need 150 micrograms a day, and what that's going to do is let you not have a goiter. That's literally is not optimal. That's just the minimum you need to not have a goiter. And if anybody's read their history, they know that back during World War I, there were tens of thousands of young men that the U.S. military couldn't draft because they had a huge goiter. They lived in Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, Montana, those places. It's called the goiter belt because they're so far from an ocean that there's just no iodine there at all. And so they were also eating poverty foods, basically living on corn and wheat and beans. And so there's no iodine in that because the soil had no iodine. So they all had this humongous goiter. You can't send a boy off to fight if he's got this huge goiter because you know that he's not going to be an optimal soldier. And so that's where iodizing the salt came from. And then other countries followed that lead. And there's actually some countries that put iodine in the diet in other ways besides salt. I won't spill the beans. People can do their own research and find out how do other countries get iodine in the diet. So now, why do we need this iodine? It's all about your thyroid gland, right? Wrong. Here's the thing, and I've got a YouTube video with the research proving this in the show notes that you can click on and read it yourself. Every cell line, and there's hundreds and hundreds of different types of cells in the human body, right? Every cell line we've ever looked at has something on its cell membrane called a sodium iodide symporter. This is a little machine on each cell of your body. And as far as we know, it's every single cell in the human body. We've never found a cell in the human body that didn't have an NIS, sodium iodide symporter. And this is a little machine that spits out sodium and pulls in iodine. The human body does not do things that don't benefit itself. That would be a waste of energy. These cells are not pulling in iodine just for the hell of it, because it's popular, because it's a meme. They're not doing that. They're doing it because they need that iodine. So the take-home message is iodine's not just about your thyroid. Now, if you've studied a little bit, or if you're a woman with fibrocystic breast disease, you also know that breast tissue in both men and women have breast tissue. Women on average have more. breast tissue also concentrates iodine. There's a reason for that. There's multiple reasons for that, right? So if you've read a little bit or you have fibrocystic breast disease, you know it's not just the thyroid, it's also mammary tissue. And then if you've read a little more, you're like, oh, but the salivary glands, they also concentrate iodine. That's weird. Wonder why they do that. But then when you find out the truth, Jesse, that every cell in the human body needs iodine and actively harvests iodine from the bloodstream, then you're like, oh God. So, I mean, if every cell in my body does that, and also remember, I'm an animal biologist. Every cell in every animal we've ever studied, Jesse, has a sodium iodide symporter and pulls iodine from the environment into their body. Now, who can know that and know the truth of that? Read the research in my YouTube video about iodine and go, okay, well that must mean by definition that iodine is a big damn deal. Yes, there's actually a ton of research in European countries and Scandinavian countries about iodine and brain development in children. And you can literally add 10 points to the average IQ score. And there's problems with IQ scoring. I agree. I know. Don't get started on that. But if you can increase your child's IQ score by 10 points on average by making sure that they get sufficient iodine in their diet when their brain is developing, come on. That makes this a huge deal. Iodine, supplementing iodine will literally make fibrocystic breast disease disappear. It will make it go away. It will make a goiter disappear, make it go away, right? And then every cell in your body is obviously benefiting from having good supplies of iodine in your diet, or your cells wouldn't be pulling it in from the outside environment. Iodine is a huge deal. The average doctor has no idea about anything I just said. And so if you go to your doctor, they're liable to yell at you if you tell them you're taking an iodine supplement. They're liable to be like, oh my God, no, because they remember that when they were a child, there were medications that their grandmother, if they skinned their knee, they would put that on their knee that had a skull and crossbones on it. And so they remember that and they're like, oh no, you don't want to. And they also know that you can kill someone's thyroid with radioactive iodine. That's not what comes in an iodine supplement, okay? But you can absolutely kill somebody's thyroid with radioactive iodine. But that's not what's in the supplement. And so we know, we kind of sort of remember these weird vague memories of, oh, I think that's bad, right? Skull and crossbones, oh, it killed his thyroid. And then we apply that to just, oh, getting iodine in your diet. And it's foolishness, but only the human species can be so intelligent but still be so susceptible to just abject foolishness. It's a fascinating species, isn't it?
No, definitely. And I know Lugol's is what you recommend. How does somebody figure out dosage?
So I typically will put 3 drops of 2% Lugol's in my morning cup of coffee. And so then also, I told you occasionally I'll eat some tuna, eat some salmon. Even the cheapest tuna and cheapest salmon is going to be a great source of iodine. If you want to try to eat predominantly plant based, please don't. But if you do, then any kind of sea vegetable, seaweed is going to be an excellent source of iodine in your diet. Also, the minerals from salty, they have added iodine, I think 300 mics a day. So it's not enough, but it's at least going to get you enough that you'll never develop a goiter, and it'll give a little bit for the rest of your cells in your body to use. We're working on actually increasing the amount of iodine in the salty minerals as we speak. We're trying to figure out how to do that while keeping true to what I said earlier of 100% clean, trustworthy, transparent ingredients. And so we're working on that right now. But iodine's a huge deal. Nobody needs to be afraid of iodine. Now, Dr. Brownstein, who I mentioned earlier, he recommends anywhere from 25 to 50 milligrams a day, which is 25,000 to 50,000 micrograms a day. Now, the average doctor is going to lose their mind if you tell them you're taking that much iodine. But the research is definitive on this. There is no harm that comes to people from taking that much iodine. I don't recommend that much, but if you want to take more than, so 2 or 3 drops of 2% Lugols is going to be about 5 milligrams or 5,000 micrograms. And so that's my daily dose is 5 milligrams a day. But if you want to take 10, 25, 50 milligrams, I don't think it's going to hurt you. Keep in mind, the average Japanese person eats 17 milligrams a day just in their daily diet because it's so full of seafood and sea vegetables and seaweed. They get 17 to 20 milligrams a day just in their regular diets, even if they're not trying to optimize for iodine. And there's literally no bad outcomes from that in Japanese society or Japanese medical literature, which I've looked at. So you cannot say, oh, that's dangerous. Based on what? Show me the research. Guess what? They strike out every time because there's no research showing that. So I think that most people, if they just put 2 or 3 drops of Lugol's 2%, there's also a 5%, which is fine. Put that in your food or your drink every day. You're going to be happy you did that. And it will not cause thyroid cancer. It will not cause hyperthyroidism, and it will not cause or worsen Hashimoto's thyroiditis. These are myths out in the medical community that are absolutely not true at all. And these are myths that are perpetuated by some authors and gurus who I have a ton of respect for and am friends with, but they're just wrong about that. They're just wrong.
Given what you shared there about kids and their IQ, you have a couple young kids. How do you go about making sure they're getting enough iodine?
Yeah. How do I optimize my own flesh and blood children's IQ? Let's make that the question.
Okay.
That's a sexy question, right? So I make sure that they get iodine. They both still drink goat milk, and at least once a day, when they're not looking, I will put a drop of Lugol's 2% in their little glass of goat milk that they're going to drink. If Beckett saw me do that, he wouldn't touch the goat milk because he's very finicky. So I have to sneak and do that. I make sure that they get vitamin D3. I have D3K2 drops just for them, and I'll sneak that into the goat milk at least once a day, just a few drops, just a weight appropriate dose, right? Also, I make sure that they get plenty of animal fat in their diet. That's number 3. People keep count because there's one more. I make sure that they get plenty of saturated animal fat in their diet because the human brain needs that for development. I was talking to a guy and he said, because I was telling him about carnivore, and he said, my grandmother, when I was a little kid, she would, when there was a new baby in the family, I remember, I caught her, she would sneak with a little piece of pork fat or a little piece of beef fat, and she would put that in the baby's mouth. And one of the mothers caught her and was like, what are you doing? She's like, you have to do this, or the baby's brain won't develop right. Now, okay, that's just one anecdote, one grandmama somewhere in Tennessee, right? Then I looked into this because that's how my brain works. I need to look in. I wonder if any other, guess what, Jesse? There are multiple recorded instances in anthropology and archaeology that this was standard practice for newborn infants or infants who were teething and were about to start eating solid food. Animal fat was very often the first solid food that was put into their mouth for thousands of years. Gives me chills thinking about that. These little grandmothers and aunts and great grandmothers, they knew this before there was a Harvard School of Public Health or a Tufts School of Nutrition. They had figured out these babies need animal fat in their mouth as early as you can get it in there because it helps their brain develop. Then the final thing, number 4, Beckett and Bonnie. Beckett's 6, Bonnie's 3. They have never ingested a single cc of fluoridated water. To my knowledge, they've never ingested any fluoride ever in their short little lives. If they did, it came from the natural water source because there are some natural water sources that have a tiny bit of fluoride in them. But never have they drank and never will they drink fluoridated water. Those are the 4 ways that I optimize my own children's IQ potential. Now, it's up to them to do something with that IQ, right? I'm not in charge of that. All I can do as a parent is optimize their ability to have the highest IQ possible. And then it's their job as adults to go do something with that IQ.
As you talk about water there, you mentioned before the RO water for drinking. What about for baths, showers, throughout the house? Do you filter that too?
Some people are they're purists and they want all the water to be pristine. And I don't blame you. If you can afford that, get a whole house filter and filter out the chloride and the fluoride. And you'll get some other stuff too with a good quality whole house filter. We don't have that. I don't think that's a big deal. So we have this thing on our skin. It's dead skin cells. It's called a stratum corneum. Okay. And it protects you from absorbing things from just water. Now, you can use oil bases and petroleum derivatives to make things absorb through your skin. But just if something's dissolved in water, you're not going to absorb much of it. So if you take a shower and the water's fluoridated, you're not going to absorb any meaningful amount of fluoride or chloride from that shower water. If you take a bath and you sit in the bath for an hour and the parts of your body that are not covered with stratum corneum, which would be your mucosal membranes in the underwear area, you might absorb a little. It's still not enough of a deal to worry. So if you cannot afford a whole house filter, if you make sure every drop of water that you drink and cook with is run through either distillation or reverse osmosis. And a lot of people say, oh, there'll be no minerals. Well, guess what? You put a dropper full of this in there. Now you've got the best mineralized water on planet Earth, right? And so I don't think you absorb enough to matter from water you bathe in. But if you cook with it or you drink it, 100% it needs to be not fluoridated. So let me say this because a lot of people don't know this. If you drink any kind of soft drink, from Coca-Cola to Pepsi to Dr. Pepper to Mountain Dew to Zevia, unless they specifically say so on the bottle or on their website, that was made with fluoridated municipal water. Much of the water that you buy, like Dasani, it's literally tap water from some municipality that is fluoridated that they run through some softeners and conditioners and a filter to make it taste good, if water can taste good, or just not have a taste, basically just be wet. But it still has fluoride in it. The majority of fruit juices that you buy at the supermarket is reconstituted with fluoridated water. All of the pre-prepared food that has any water added to it that you buy either frozen or fresh at a supermarket was made with fluoridated water. So a lot of people think, oh no, we buy bottled water, it's probably fluoridated unless it specifically says on the label or their website that it's fluoride free. It's not fluoride free. Okay. A lot of people think, no, it says on the bottle fresh squeezed orange juice or fresh orange juice. Honey, that doesn't exist. You can't ship that. Okay, they condense it, they dehydrate it to like an oil, and when they get closer to your house, they reconstitute it, and they actually add orange flavoring and stuff back to it to make it taste fresh. That contains fluoridated water. I'm sorry to burst your bubble, but that's how modern society does its food. They didn't squeeze a bunch of oranges and put it in a box and then ship it to Tennessee, and that's just no, that's not how it works. You got to look into this stuff. You cannot trust the marketing. You cannot trust the advertising. If you're drinking a liquid you bought at a supermarket, it almost assuredly has fluoride in it. Cold coffee, pre-made cold coffees, almost all made with fluoridated water. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I know now you're like, shit. Now I got to go back and look at all this. Yeah, I know. That's part of being an adult who's aware and alert and paying attention. You have to actually exert some effort every now and then in order for your family to have their best health.
What about brushing your teeth? Do you take that RO water and brush with that?
We don't. So the fun fact for you: back in 2014, here in Benton County, I went to the city council and I got the 3 out of 5 votes I needed to have fluoride removed from the Benton County municipal water supply back in 2014, way before it was cool. to have fluoride taken out of the water. And so the water we use here is fluoride free already, other than any naturally occurring fluoride, which I'm fine with because the human body's been exposed to that for millions of years, right? So I don't care about that. I care about the added fluoride. So no, we brush our teeth with water out of the sink, and we bathe in water, but ours doesn't have fluoride. But I don't think that's so. If you want to be perfect, I guess you could take reverse osmosis water and have a pitcher in the bathroom and use that for brushing your teeth. I don't think that's necessary. Also, our kids have never used fluoridated toothpaste, nor do we. Another brand, I'll actually say the brand is Boca because it's fluoride free and it has hydroxyapatite in it. That's a toothpaste brand. I have no affiliation with them. Don't get a penny. But that can actually help remineralize your teeth and put calcium and make your enamel stronger. It's been clinically proven, and it has no fluoride. And so that's what the kids use to brush their teeth. And they've never, ever, ever been exposed to fluoride if I had my say about it.
One thing I've heard in talking about this is wanting me to do more research in this area is vapor. Say you're in the shower and you're breathing in chlorine because it's in the water, not something you're blocking. Is that something you plan on implementing?
Maybe. So here's the thing. What I tell everybody is do the best you can, right? Do the best you can afford. Because at the end of the day, I don't need you laying in bed at night worrying and getting your cortisol up because maybe you inhale some chlorine and some fluoride in your shower water vapor, right? If that's the worst thing that you're doing to your body, dude, you're winning. Okay, if that's the worst insult to your physiology is that you may have inhaled a few molecules of fluoride from the water vapor coming from your hot shower, huzzah, you are winning life. Okay, is that physiologically possible? Yeah, it's very possible that you might be inhaling some chloride, some chlorine or some fluorine from the shower steam. Yes, maybe, or the bath steam, or the if you boil water on the stove, you may inhale some of that. And the lungs, it's much easier to absorb things through the lungs because there's no stratum corneum, those dead skin cells I told you about earlier. And that's why you can smoke cigarettes and absorb nicotine directly, or smoke other things and absorb it directly, is because it's very easy to absorb stuff in your lungs. But for the average person who's eating the standard American diet, right, who's just eating and drinking crap and drinking all the fluoridated Pepsi and all the fluoridated orange juice, the steam in their shower is the least of their concerns. We'll get to that later when they get in the master class. I first got to get them to quit eating crap and quit drinking crap and try to eat a proper human diet. Then we'll worry about the shower steam later. The problem is so many influencers, they talk about stuff like that. And I get it. You got your stick, you got your little niche that you're doing, but it confuses people, especially the hypothetical guy we're talking to today, who's just immediately went, "Wait, you mean the food I eat matters? What? I didn't know that. I thought I could eat anything. Oh crap." That guy, that's the guy I'm trying to help and save his life, because that's the guy at highest risk for a heart attack or a stroke and all the other pathologies that come along with eating and drinking a crap diet. I'm trying to help that guy. But when he watches Dave Asprey or somebody wearing his red blue blockers and talking about the shower steam and talking about this root from the Himalayan mountains that you need to be eating, that completely and thoroughly confuses people. And then for people with limited financial means, they're like, I can't afford a $200 pair of glasses and $150 a month for this root from South America. And I can't afford a $400 whole house filter to filter all my water. I guess I might as well give up. And it makes it a futile pursuit for people of limited means, or people who they don't want to become experts in human nutrition. They just want to lose weight, or they just want to reverse type 2 diabetes. They don't care about all this minutia. And when you talk about all this minutia, you turn people off. They're like, well, hell, if it's that complicated, I guess I'll just buy this line of supplements, or I'll just forget it and do whatever, because I'm not interested in becoming a PhD level person in human nutrition and human physiology. I just thought I would eat a little better. Damn, this is too complicated. That's what winds up happening. people with the money wind up buying that root that Dave's talking about, or buying his blue blockers with the affiliate link that happens to be in the show notes, right? Because that's just what people with money do. They buy shit they probably don't need. But I'm talking to people who cannot afford that stuff, but they cannot afford to continue being metabolically unhealthy. That's who I'm trying to help. And I'm trying to help as many of them as possible. And talking about that kind of stuff, that kind of minutia, that trying to major in the minors, that doesn't help them at all. It confuses them and it frustrates them.
I hear you. I agree with you. My pushback, though, is there will be people tuning in today that have done the diet piece, done a lot of the fundamentals we've talked about, and they're ready for that next step. And for people that aren't, we're planting seeds. And it might not be tomorrow, but it might be 10 years from now where they've made these switches. They've gotten metabolically healthy through the diet and the lifestyle, the big foundational pieces, and they're ready for that next step. And then they maybe go order the shower filter at that point. So I think it's important to still put it in there, and there'll be people that it can benefit at some time.
When they're ready. I totally agree with you, because what I want people to do is focus on the 80%. Where can you do the most good for your health? But yes, eventually, once they've got the 80% under their belt, and then they get the exercise and the movement, that's the next 10%, in my opinion. They've got that under their belt. Yeah, then start looking at the minutia. Start looking at the 1%. That's what I call them, 1% solutions. The blue blockers, that may be a deal for you. Is it a big deal? I don't think so, but maybe. Maybe that root would give you 1% better health. And so I'm not denigrating you, because I know you have lots of different kinds of guests on, but I want people to focus on the basics, right? Scripture says if you've got a huge beam in your eye, don't be worrying about the little mote. Let's get the beam situated first, right? And I think that same lesson applies to health as well. Fix the 80%, my friend. Then we can talk about the 1% stuff over here. But you know as well as I do, Jesse, human nature being what it is, we are so seduced by the minutia, by the 1%, by the little weird little hacks and biohacking. That stuff is so sexy. We are all like, oh, maybe I need those special shoes or those special glasses or this special thing. And then they ignore the big, important, easy things they could fix. And they're over here saving up their money to buy this $800, whatever the hell it is. And it's like, dude, that's going to give you 1% benefit. And you're literally over here eating Cheetos and drinking Pepsi, but you're going to buy this $800 little trinket that it might help you 1%. That's my beef with it. But I totally get your point, and I respect your point.
And I feel the same. Tying all this together, we talked about iodine, we talked about fluoride, we talked about chlorine. They're all halides. And a previous guest of the show 2 times is Dr. Elizabeth Bright. I believe you've interviewed her as well. And the way she looks at her iodine is a shield for the body. So if you're getting that in, as you talked about before, the way I understand it from her, that can protect you from things like the fluoride and the chlorine.
To some degree. And I love Elizabeth Bright. She's very intelligent, and she's helped so many people. So here's the thing. We've got an iodine receptor in the human body, either on my skin cell or on my thyroid cell, right? The problem with just thinking of if I get enough iodine, it's going to shield my receptors, is that fluoride has a 20x higher affinity for that receptor than iodine. And so literally fluoride can knock iodine out of the receptor and occupy the receptor. 20x. And in some cases, in some special situations, it can be 100x more affinity. And chlorine, on average, is anywhere from 3 to 10x. So it can also knock the iodine out, right? So that's why I would much prefer that you eliminate your fluoride exposure and minimize your chlorine exposure and get a decent supply of iodine in your diet. Because now, if you're eating the standard American diet, everything you drink's fluoridated, then 2 to 3 milligrams, like I get, of iodine, it's probably not enough. And I think, in fact, Dr. Brownstein and Dr. Bright, the majority of people they deal with, they're assuming that they're drinking fluoridated water. And that's why they're recommending these much higher doses of iodine to try to basically overwhelm and keep the fluoride and chloride out of that receptor by overwhelming that receptor with so much iodine that just odds are it's going to be iodine that adheres, not fluoride or chlorine. And I respect that, because if you're not teaching people get the fluoride out of your mouth and minimize the chlorine exposure, then they probably do need higher doses of iodine. Yeah.
Important nuance there. And I want to be clear, I definitely advocate for avoiding this stuff too, but just having that shield there as an additional barrier. And bromine or bromide is another one that fits in there as well.
And that used to be a much bigger deal, because all of the major bread manufacturers used to brominate their bread. And so if you ate any kind of bread, you were getting a mega dose of bromine, which also is a problem as well because it's in the halides. But now, unless you're drinking Mountain Dew and just a few other things, you're not really getting much bromine in your diet. But again, if you're getting at least 2 or 3 milligrams of iodine a day, the minuscule amount of bromine you're going to be getting if you're eating a proper human diet, which doesn't include any bread, right? Then you're probably going to be pretty safe, and your thyroid tissue, your mammary tissue, your salivary tissue, and all your other cells are going to have enough iodine, and they're going to be protected from the other halides enough, because you're minimizing your exposure, that you're going to be doing great.
If you enjoyed that clip, you're going to want to head over here and catch a full episode. I'll see you over there.
Dispel the myth that keto or carnivore is some fad diet. This is literally the oldest diet known to humanity. It cannot be bad for you, because the 4 things that humans have been doing for the longest period of time